we had a great weekend up until now. Tonight, we are going to be doing our next wellness webinar. So I appreciate you guys coming in and tuning in tonight. So we're going to talk about real solutions for true healing of the body. And so I really hope that you'll be able to actually get something from tonight that may be able to help you along your health journey, things that me and my wife have been able to experience and be blessed by, be able to bless others with. So I pray that you be blessed on tonight well. And so with that, I just wanted to go ahead and get started. No reason to belabor the point. So one of the first things that me and my wife like to do is just kind of give you a little bit of information about our journey in terms of, why are we actually doing this? What is it that we actually have to offer, what we experienced? And so a lot of what we experience is why we're actually doing this. And so first, I wanted to start with our journey. Again, really started with my wife. It started just a little bit before mine, about 3 months. I saw what was happening with her, and so I decided to kind of see what was going on. But with my wife, I did want to show again a before and after picture. So there's a proof there, no AI there, but really just want to talk about her story. You say both of our stories, getting into our 40s. We are both in the medical field, both health professionals. I'm a clinical pharmacist. She's a internal medicine nurse practitioner. And so with that, a lot of knowledge, you could say wealth of knowledge, if you will, of, what is supposed to actually help with our health. That's what we went to school for, paid all the big bucks to be able to help other people in terms of knowing what they needed to do to get their health together. So of course we can take that same information to help ourselves, right? Well, one thing that was we had heard so much about, and when you get to your 40s, is that everything starts to go downhill starting in your 40s. And when we were in our 30s, of course, it's kind of like, yeah, that thing that people say. But we felt like we are doing okay with our health. Well, when we got there, things actually started to turn a little south. Things started to turn a corner, but not for the better. And in my wife's situation, a lot of things started coming together. So she started getting a lot more joint pain that she'd had given before. So a lot more inflammation in the joints, but honestly around the entirety of the body. Visceral fat, in other words, fat around the gut, was something that she was really, really, really trying so hard to get rid of, but just couldn't do it. Working at about 5 to 6 times a week, at least for an hour. Say at least for an hour, just going hard, going strong. But regardless of what she did, even what she was eating, trying to, into a calorie deficit, eating like a rabbit a lot of times, that fat would just simply not go away. And sometimes like a lot of yo-yo, just going back and forth, but never getting to where she wanted to be. She was dealing with anxiety and depression, something that had actually been there from her 30s, but it's actually never really, got any better. If anything, was still lingering, still there, despite being on medications. She also was getting irritable bowel syndrome, so I said IBS, and acid reflux that was really getting to be problematic, especially when she got into maybe her mid 40s. Maybe her reflux was getting to the point where she was taking 1 med and 2 med, 3 meds. Then she started taking up to 4 to 5 meds for acid reflux, and still not getting the relief that she needed after a meal. So it's really becoming problematic for her, and she didn't really know what to do at that point. Trouble sleeping, honestly getting to a point where we're getting into perimenopause, so hot flashes, mood swings, all that muscle, actually all that exercise that she was doing, having difficulty being able to put on muscle and having a stability with her weight. But you can say it ended up being that we were blessed to be able to introduce to a system by one of our good friends now, Dr. Natasha, something that she had started not too long before that, even again as a medical professional, learning something that she honestly didn't really get a lot of training on from her health. And so by God's grace, we were able to get introduced to it. And so once, probably at the beginning, very beginning or very tail end of 2024, beginning of 2025, my wife got started on a system that truly just changed her health altogether. It really decreased her body fat. And you see that visceral fat, that belly fat, pretty much is just about gone. You can see the definition in her abs. Body fat went down from 32% down to 25%. She was starting to actually be able to put on muscle. And so for her, she was seeing a little cellulite that was starting to melt off as well. She didn't have to exercise as much. So times a week went down to about maybe 3, and still seeing a lot of these same results that I'm talking about. But again, the list goes on. Anxiety, depression, was able to come off, able to get off of the antidepressant that she'd been taking for years at that point in time. That IBS, that acid reflux, all 5, 6 meds she was taking for reflux, gone. Didn't need those anymore after starting on this system. Starting to get more restful sleep, Hot flashes pretty much went away. And again, a stable weight now for, again, pretty much about a year plus. Again, I mean, before she, lost the weight, but now that she has lost the weight, that weight has stayed off consistently and without all of the yo-yos, all the trying of different things to make the needle move, it has stayed off. And one of the biggest things is now knowing exactly how the body actually treats itself. Dietary restrictions are gone. Again, she was eating like a rabbit. I mean, I know she still doesn't eat well, but she realizes that, hey, there's ways that I can eat that I can actually still enjoy a little bit more different types of food. And so I was seeing this going on for about 3 months, and I was like, okay, I don't know what you are doing. I don't even know what you are doing, but I think I need to go ahead and give it a try myself. And so that's where my part of the story comes in. And so before that, I was having a lot of brain fog at work. Just kind of fortunately, I kind of say I had a job where I didn't have to. I've been doing the same thing for a while, but you're still feeling kind of slow and sluggish when it comes to like the brain firing, and especially after meals and things like that. But I was also having, speaking of meals, gas and bloating from poor gut health, and so I was taking some supplements to try to help with that. Uh, some of them kind of helped, but honestly, not to the extent that I wanted to. But I didn't know what else to do, so I just kept taking stubborn belly fat, and so not maybe to the point where the belly was coming out and protruding. Definitely not to the point where like, oh man, I got that body that I really want. But again, one of those things was like, hey, you're into your 40s, what can you expect? But there's also issues with joint pain, which was actually starting to be problematic when it came to me being able to actually exercise the way that I wanted to, especially when it came to leg day at the gym. When your knees and hips are, firing off at you and, cussing you out, it really makes it hard to get to that exercise. And so get through those workouts. But I was gritting and I was bearing it. But I was like, I don't know how much longer this is getting because it's literally getting worse and worse. It seemed like month by month. But I got started on this system, and just like with my wife, just about everything changed for me. So that mental clarity at work finally came to me. It's probably one of the first things that happened when I was on this system that we were able to get started on. I was also able to get my gut health pretty much turned around completely. Those supplements that I was taking no longer needed to take those and feeling better than I did when I was taking them. Gas and bloating pretty much all about gone away. My six pack has returned for the first time since high school, so that has been amazing. That belly fat pretty much melted away, honestly, within about a month and a half, maybe 2 months. Joint pain, honestly, that's the biggest thing. So that was not something for me that happened right away, but once that joint pain started going, I started slowly noticing, I was like, hey, I'm not noticing as much pain when I'm doing my workouts. It just slowly but surely got better and better and better. And so now I'm almost pain free when I'm actually working, doing my workouts. And so it's just been amazing that inflammation gone. And so we then just decided, hey, this system that we've been able to get introduced to, we've really got to share this with as many people as we can. We started with our family. So my mom, she's been a 30-year plus diabetic, taking medications, trying to do as best she can with her health. She's a retired registered nurse. So, again, knowing what she ought to do, but that diabetes is still there. She was doing well with her A1C. It wasn't too terribly high, but it just was there on medication though to kind of keep it under bay. She got on this same system. Her A1C dropped down to a 5. For those that don't know, that's no longer even pre-diabetic levels. I mean, pretty much it helped reverse her diabetes altogether. And these are the kinds of testimonies that we're hearing about other people who, their health had really gotten away from them, and they were really able to turn that thing around, getting off diabetes meds, getting off of high blood pressure meds, getting off the cholesterol meds, all while losing weight, losing belly fat. And so we just want to be able to share what we've learned, what we've been able to glean from. Again, a lot of information that just wasn't really presented to us when we're coming through the schooling. So hopefully you get schooled a little bit, and again, it'll be able to bless you on your health journey as well. So with that though, we're going to be talking about a particular topic tonight, and that's going to be the topic of diabetes. So that's something that's very closely related to what really we've been able to reverse in terms of our health mission. And so we'll talk about insulin resistance. That's one of the biggest things that we have learned to be able to tackle and has led to so many different positive health outcomes for us, and also to be able to improve gut health. As you can see from a lot of the testimonies that me and my wife had, that was something that was an issue for us that we, didn't even know just how big of an issue it was. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into tonight's topic discussion again, understanding diabetes, the true root behind it. Okay, so if hopefully this is something that will be a benefit to you, maybe even a family member. We'll talk about likelihood of you having a family member or friend that can benefit from this as far as the demographics behind who has type 2 diabetes, especially. definitely feel free to pass this along to them so that they can actually get some information that may be able to help them as well. And so, first off, what is diabetes? So, just to kind of make it very simple, diabetes is a condition where blood sugar stays too high. It's over a chronic period of time. With that being said, there are two types of diabetes. There's type 1 and type 2. So type 1 diabetes, this is one that was more common, if you will, back in the day, but things have definitely switched, and it's called type 1 because it was discovered before type 2. Type 1 is where the body itself just stops making a hormone called insulin. We're going to talk about in a little bit what insulin is. A lot of people have actually heard what insulin is if they don't already know what it does, but if you know anybody with diabetes or you've heard about the treatment of diabetes, you'll know about insulin. And so what insulin, when it happens, is actually that it's happening usually early on in life. Pretty much what happens is the body starts attacking the cells in your pancreas. The pancreas is usually, but it's what actually produces insulin that starts attacking the cells in your pancreas that are responsible for making insulin. So your body's attacking itself, and from there, you're not able to make insulin. So one of the biggest things that insulin does is that it helps to bring your blood sugar down. Again, I'll talk about a little bit more details about how it does that. And with that, pretty much you require insulin for treatment. Since your body's not making it, now we've got to get sources of insulin from outside the body to be able to help keep your body being able to keep your own blood sugar down, especially after we eat, because that's when typically your blood sugar would go up. Now, with type 2 diabetes, it's a little bit of a different situation. Again, blood sugar is staying too high, but the reason why is different. It's because the body becomes resistant to insulin. So in other words, your body is still making insulin. It's just that the cells of your body, they're not listening to insulin like they ought to. Okay, it's like they had their ears muffled. It's like, okay, I kind of listen to it, but not really. I kind of respond, but not really. So this often develops over time. So it's not something that happens overnight. But when it does happen, it's strongly linked to lifestyle and metabolic health. So it's not anything that, again, your body is just kind of attacking itself like with type 1, but it's more so about how we're living and the decisions that we're making from day to day. When it's all said and done, between type 2 diabetes and type 1 diabetes, over 90% of the diabetes cases out there are type 2. So most people that are dealing with diabetes are dealing with type 2 diabetes. So a question that most people are asking nowadays is, why is diabetes so common? Well, if you didn't know how common it is, I want to share that over 38 million Americans now have diabetes. And when it comes down to it, 1 in 3 adults have pre-diabetes. So that's when your blood sugar is, pretty much on its way to getting to a place where we would give it that official diagnosis. So there's normal levels of blood sugar control, or if you're doing your fasting labs, where your blood sugar should be. And then there's this area of pre-diabetes where it's like not quite diabetes, but things are not normal. And they're kind of on its way to being at a place where, again, you would have that diagnosis of diabetes. 1 in 3 adults in America have pre-diabetes. Now we have over 300 million people in America, so that means that over 100 million people have pre-diabetes. But the crazy thing is, when you're talking about pre-diabetes or diabetes, most people don't even know if they have it. We're talking about pre-diabetes, 80 to 90% of individuals don't even know if they have it. And when it comes to diabetes, 30 to 40% don't know if they have it. So this is actually a very significant thing that people aren't necessarily getting checked. So even if you're watching this and you're like, I don't know, I don't have diabetes, or maybe you're like, yeah, I have diabetes, maybe I don't, definitely would encourage you, family member, whoever, to actually get, if you haven't gotten your physical yet, get your labs updated, get them checked just to make sure. Because again, I hate for you to be in one of these numbers and not know, and from there not to be able to take the necessary actions that you can to help battle and combat and potentially reverse. Talk about some ways to be able to do that. Again, something my mom was able to achieve. So hate for you to, again, just not know that, hit it, not able to know what's going on and not be able to get to it sooner than later. And so with that though, I want to actually say that diabetes isn't just about sugar. That's typically what we hear about: blood sugar going up, blood sugar going up. Well, it's more to it. So the reason why it's not just about sugar is because sugar is really just a symptom. Once we have diabetes, we're just in a situation where your body can't get the sugar out of your blood, and so it just stays there. But the question is, well, why is the sugar all of a sudden, especially when talking about type 2 diabetes, why is it all of a sudden get to a place where those sugar levels are starting to build up and build up? Well, the deeper issue now is called insulin resistance. So that's almost like a fancy word, but it's a word that's very common nowadays. People are hearing about it more to why that blood sugar is increasing. I mentioned before that with type 2 diabetes, your body is not responding or not listening to insulin the way that it is like it ought to. That's pretty much what insulin resistance is. Your body is resisting the effect effect of insulin. Insulin is there, but it's not really trying to listen to it, not really trying to respond as it normally would. And so with that, most people actually they'll develop this whole insulin resistance years before they get a diagnosis of, again, either pre-diabetes or diabetes. Some people could be 5 to 10, but honestly, for I believe it's the majority of the cases, it's 10 to 20 years that insulin resistance has been in effect, and your body has been able to try to adjust. It's been trying to fix blood sugars down, but at some point in time, it kind of gets to a point where it's like it gets overwhelmed, and now these blood sugars start to rise, and that's when we start to get these diagnoses. And so, like I mentioned before, we're going to talk about what insulin is and what it does. Well, it is a hormone that the body produces, like I mentioned, in the pancreas to help keep the blood sugar down. Now, as far as when it is actually activated, well, pretty much after you have a meal. So when you actually eat a meal, your gut breaks down, and the enzymes and different things breaks down that food into fuel. Or pretty much a main source of fuel in our body, that especially that we prefer to use, is going to be glucose or sugar. All right. Now, when that sugar actually gets into the system, it doesn't just magically start getting into cells for energy on its own. It needs something to help it get into the cells. And that something is going to be that hormone called insulin. So pretty much you have receptors in the pancreas that lets it know it's like, hey, there's sugar in the system. We got to start pumping out insulin. And so it does that, and those insulin molecules act like a key. So you can see that little diagram I have there. You have the cell there, you have the little keyhole, that'll be an insulin receptor, and you have the key called insulin that actually unlocks the door, if you will, to the cells, and that allows the glucose, that sugar, to actually get into the cells, so that for one, it gets out of the bloodstream, where it could actually be pretty problematic to other parts of the body, but now it's actually getting into the cells, which actually need that energy. And so again, cells use sugar or glucose for energy. But what is insulin resistance? What is actually happening when the body's not listening to it? Or you can talk about why is that at a time, which is, you look at insulin and what it does. It's pretty darn important. Why would the body say it's not going to do this? It's not going to listen to the insulin like it should. Well, pretty much what can happen is that the cells stop responding to insulin because of prolonged exposure to insulin over time. I should say prolonged excessive exposure to insulin over time. So, I mean, you're going to be eating all the way throughout your life, which means you should always be pumping out insulin. That's not the problem. It's just that when your body's pumping out way too much insulin than it ought to, that the body is not used to or not accustomed to it. I mean, human beings have been around for a long time. So, unfortunately, we get to the point where a lot of us are actually doing things, again, a lifestyle where insulin is getting pumped out way too frequently. And, we haven't changed, but now our bodies are getting used to seeing insulin way too much. And so they stop responding to it. So now with that, if insulin's not being responded to, that sugar is not actually getting an opportunity to get into the cell. Those cells are not unlocking, and that sugar is not getting into the cell, and that sugar just stays in the bloodstream. Now we start to have, again, these blood sugars going up. So again, this is the symptom. It's not the problem. The problem was insulin resistance. The problem is that your body's not listening to insulin. But when that happens, now that sugar stays in the bloodstream. And now to see that, your body's like, okay, well, we just pumped out some insulin and that sugar's still up. Let's pump out some more insulin. We really got to make sure that this blood sugar comes down. And so now we're getting getting exposed to even more and more and more insulin over time. And so pretty much it's getting vicious cycle where, again, the more you pump out insulin, the more your cells don't want to listen to insulin. Because if insulin is around all the time, it can't just keep listening to it. It's got to actually pump the brakes a little bit. It's like, look, I can't keep taking sugar in to the cells. I got to actually, if you're always going to be around, I can't listen to you all the time. But then that just makes the body say, well, there's still sugar in the blood. We got to pump out more insulin, which is cells like, hey, I'm not really trying to listen to it. And it's like, well, there's still sugar in the blood. And you see where this is going. And so this is just this reason why you can see it, even after decades, potentially, of your body somewhat being able to overcome it by pumping out more insulin, at some point in time, it's just too much. And so what is driving this insulin resistance is going to be from frequent blood sugar spikes. Okay, so one of the things that we're doing nowadays that we didn't used to do is that we're eating several times throughout the day. A thing called a snack was not really a thing decades ago, even so like maybe the mid 1950s. But we started developing these processed foods that could stay on the shelf, put them in a nice little wrapper. They'll be fresh for you, quote unquote, a week later, a month later, maybe months later. And so it allowed us to actually start eating at times when we typically didn't. Typically, maybe back in the 1950s, we're eating only at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's no such thing as a snack. You just ate at those times and you were done. They weren't even late night snacks. That was it. Well, that means that you only had blood sugar going up about 3 times a day. Well, now we eat about 5 to 6 times a day, which means that every single time that we eat and our blood sugar goes up, now our insulin has to get pumped out to be able to do that. This means that we're getting exposed to insulin way more frequently throughout day after day after day than we were decades ago. So this is something that's actually contributing to it. Then it's also the fact that we're eating highly processed foods. Now, with the highly processed foods, again, these snacks, what they do is typically to increase the shelf life is to take the fiber out of it. Now, fiber is a very important part of the foods that we're eating because what it can do, especially when it comes to our carbs, is it actually blunts the impact of the blood sugar spike that takes place after we actually eat. Fiber would slow down just how quickly blood, I should say sugar, gets into our bloodstream from the gut. And so, your sugar might get in there, but instead of shooting through the roof, that fiber allows that blood sugar to be more of a, slow curve. Well, so much of the process we're eating, fiber is gone. So if there's a sugar to be had, I would say sugar, one of the biggest ways we're getting sugar is through the macro called carbs or carbohydrates. That blood sugar spike is through the roof. Well, we get our sugars up and get them up quick, then insulin has to respond in kind. And so not only insulin spikes throughout the day, but we're getting very high insulin spikes. A lot of insulin being pumped out there because they're like, whoa, our blood sugars are going through the roof. We need to do something immediately. And so chronic inflammation is actually something that can actually cause that as well. Now, the crazy thing is that insulin resistance can lead to chronic inflammation, but chronic inflammation also has an impact on our fat cells. And so that also then drives our inability to be able to listen to insulin as well. Those inflammatory markers, they hit those insulin receptors, and now even more so, those insulin receptors don't want to listen to insulin. Now, there's also a gut health connection. So we talked about gut health, and so the main focus here has been this insulin resistance. But here's the thing about our gut health. Gut bacteria influence our metabolism. We may not know this, but there's a big connection between what's going on in our gut and the trillions upon trillions of gut bacteria out there and what's happening throughout the rest of our bodies, even metabolically. And so when we have poor gut health, typically when there's this poor balance of the different types of bacteria that are in our gut, we have good gut bacteria and bad gut bacteria. And honestly, I don't really like to use the terms bad and good. It's just that we have gut bacteria that are starting to take over because we're not feeding other types of bacteria that are actually good for our health. And so when we have that, then we actually have the situation where we're having more inflammation. A lot of those bad bacteria, if you will, that are outnumbering the good bacteria, they produce these things called endotoxins. Well, they're supposed to just stay in the gut and be flushed out. No big deal. But if they start to, those bacteria start to increase in numbers, then they start putting out more and more of this toxin, starts to injure the lining of the gut. And now that toxin gets spread into our bloodstream because pretty much our gut is right there on the lining of, again, the rest of our body. So it gets in there and then it starts to actually, again, cause inflammation, again, starts getting into those insulin receptors, like I said, and causing them to not listen to insulin even more so than they would have before. And so why does all this even matter? You have high blood sugar caused by diabetes. Why should we care at all? Well, one of the biggest things, or actually some of the biggest things, are the complications of diabetes. And so when we have these high blood sugars over a long period of time, it can lead to a lot of serious things. First being heart disease, I should say cardiovascular disease. So heart disease and also potentially stroke. Those levels or the likelihood of you having a stroke or a heart attack with diabetes is 4 times higher than it is with the rest of the population. So that is a huge deal to have diabetes, and again, for it to just kind of linger around. I mean, pretty much that means that as far as one having either a stroke or heart attack, there's somewhat of a ticking time bomb, especially relative to the rest of the population that doesn't have diabetes. When we have kidney disease, a lot of times that's going to be related to issues with having diabetes and poor blood sugar control over the years. I mean, a lot of the people who actually need kidney transplants, they're diabetic because of that damage that blood sugar has had to the kidneys over time. Also have nerve damage. Probably have heard of people having what they call neuropathy. That's just fancy medical term for nerve pain. A lot of times that's going to be caused by diabetes. It's going to be caused by the impact of all this excess sugar in the blood on the nerves, causing that pain. And that can actually even lead to things like having those foot ulcers that you may have heard about when it comes to patients with diabetes. It can also even lead to poor circulation and, again, potentially those amputations. Also, we have, so I talked about the poor wound healing, that's supposed to be the last one, but we also have vision problems. So it affects what's going on with our eyes. So a lot of people with diabetes, again, long-term uncontrolled diabetes, they may have vision problems to the point where it actually takes their vision as well. And so this is not anything for us to slouch on, when it comes to diagnosis of diabetes, we really need to get it under control. And so, how are we mostly doing that? Well, the traditional approach, especially here in the West, is going to be for us to focus our treatments on medications. So, pretty much what we're really trying to do is trying to hit those blood sugars and bring them down. Like I mentioned before, though, that's the symptom of what's going on. It's not really the root. But again, the symptom does actually cause a lot of these complications over time. And so, if we can try to lower those, again, we may be pushing some things off. And so, we have things that can actually bring those numbers down. Diet and exercise. And so, again, maybe trying to adjust the amount of carbohydrates. Those are going to be your, whether they taste sweet or not, they actually get converted mostly into sugar in the body. And so we can bring those down, then maybe we don't have as much to fight. But again, exercise is something that we typically promote to try to also burn off some of those calories, if we will. But we also have medications. We have medications like metformin. That's one of the main ones that people get started on, especially for type 2 diabetes. GLP-1s now are a really big name that a lot of people are hearing about now. But what they may not understand is that typically these are started as diabetic medications that we've seen, hey, they have some benefit when it comes to losing weight. So that's really what we're hearing them about. But if you're diabetic, and there's a good chance that you might actually be on a GLP-1 maybe to help with the blood sugar and potentially to help with the weight, because a lot of times weight gain and diabetes goes together. And then, of course, we talked about insulin as well. And then again, at the end of the day, though, we're just managing symptoms. There's the managing of symptoms. So again, we talked about what can happen with the complications. We have stents in our blood vessels, especially in the heart, or maybe even in our the carotid arteries, because again, of what's going on with the complications, the higher likelihood of surgery, stroke or heart attack. Again, it may even be to the point where we just have to cut off a toe, a foot, again, because of the complications there. And again, dialysis because of the kidney being lost or the kidney not being able to actually function the way that it ought to. And so again, we're just kind of managing these complications, but we're not really getting to the root of what's happening. But what about if we can get to the root? What if we can actually do something about this insulin resistance? Well, that can actually then, if we're dealing with insulin resistance, which is causing diabetes, if we can reverse that, then we can reverse everything that comes after that. Your blood sugar is not going up. It's now leading to these complications. And on top of that, a lot of times with diabetes, again, we're having even weight gain, which I didn't talk about. We're also potentially being able to lose weight as well, something that is very highly related to insulin resistance. So when we actually are able to improve insulin resistance, we're able to stabilize our blood sugars, reduce those insulin spikes, because again, the sugar's not going up nearly as much as it would have been. We support our gut health, and we also give the body time to rest. So all of these are going to be strategies that we can use to be able to improve insulin resistance. And so two powerful strategies that, again, me and my wife, we were introduced to be able to really help with this is going to be blood sugar stabilization. So we're decreasing those spikes and the crashes. Honestly, when your blood sugar crashes, that actually makes you really hungry. The body sees that as kind of like, oh, which typically happens after you eat something that's high in sugar. Again, your insulin spikes up, then it causes your blood sugar to come down really quickly, and that makes it go a lot lower than it typically would. And the body's response to that is like, oh, what's going on? You need to eat something. And what does it really want to do? It knows that there's certain foods that are going to cause that blood sugar to go up and go up quickly. There's going to be, again, those highly processed foods that probably cause that last insulin spike in the first place. And so you're kind of on this roller coaster ride all throughout the day. And so if we can decrease those spikes and crashes, then that helps a lot with our insulin resistance and being able to become insulin sensitive again. And again, it just decreases the insulin requirements. If our blood sugar spikes aren't going up nearly as much, then we don't need as much insulin to come to the rescue. But there's also a strategic fasting period. So what does that mean? Something that we typically will call intermittent fasting, where fasting just means that you're not eating for a portion of the day. It doesn't mean all day. It can mean that. Some people fast for days, but it doesn't mean that you're fasting all day. When you're sleeping throughout the night, you're not eating. You're technically fasting, just not eating. And so we just get strategic with it. And so this decreases our exposure to insulin because it's decreasing our exposure to food. Food is what's going to be causing our insulin to be released, like I mentioned before. And also gives the body and the gut time to heal. So if we're not eating all day, then our gut doesn't have to keep going. And again, get some healing there with the gut, and also increases fat burning. So the body typically has two main sources of energy that it likes to use, either sugar or fat. Now, a lot of people are probably like, oh, I would really like for my body to be using fat. Well, here's the kicker. your body is only going to start using fat for fuel after it starts using sugar for fuel. So if we're eating all throughout the day, which again, that food is going to be typically broken down into sugar, then pretty much all throughout the day, we're not going to be touching fat. Honestly, insulin is a fat storing hormone, so it's actually going to be holding on to the fat while it's using that sugar instead. So if we're not eating all day, then now we have an opportunity for our body to use up all the sugar that you may have had from your last meal and now start eating and getting to that fat instead. And so, what do people experience when we actually are starting to reverse insulin resistance? We're starting to become insulin resistant, insulin sensitive again. We start having those healthier blood sugars, which again is going to be the goal for anyone who's diabetic. But now you also have better energy. A lot of people who are diabetic, they just don't have good energy, mainly because, again, your body's not listening to insulin. That sugar that should be feeding those cells, it's not really getting in there. And so, you feel a lot of, fatigue, feel very sluggish. So that starts to reverse as well once you start to actually get more sensitive to the effects of insulin once again. Fat and weight loss, I talk about how that's related to insulin resistance. So you actually reverse that, start to get more sensitive there, start losing a lot of that belly fat, honestly, but fat all around, weight all around, reduce inflammation and pain. Again, a lot of that comes from insulin resistance. And also starts to increase muscle mass. Something that people don't know is that when it comes to the muscles, what do they do when they look at insulin? Well, insulin helps you to actually hold on to muscle. And so when you're again becoming insulin resistant and you're now listening to insulin, now that muscle starts to go down. So even if you're actually in the gym, if hopefully you are in the gym doing resistance training and trying to build muscle, that muscle can go out the back end if we're insulin resistant and it won't really stay the way that we want it to. And so your gains end up becoming losses in time. If you're not working out, that means you're just losing. So obviously, encourage anyone to really make sure that you're doing your resistance training and improve metabolic health overall. We talked about that pretty much throughout the whole entire presentation here. So with that, I just wanted to see if there's anyone who's on who had any questions. I'm going to check the chat real quick. Anything about insulin resistance that we're actually wanting to learn about, anything about how it relates to diabetes, even how gut health could potentially have any impact on diabetes. And I'm not seeing anything right now. So with that, I share with you guys what it is that me and my wife, again, had got introduced to that has just been a blessing for us. Now, well over a year later, we're still blessing us. And so we're sticking with it. It's been something that has really just changed our health outlook moving forward. Again, we were kind of on that downward slope, and now we're on the up and up. So we want to be able to share that with you guys. That's called the Feel Great Protocol, or I like to call it the Feel Great System. And so with that, I just want to talk about a little bit of what we've already been talking about, just how much people are struggling now with their health. And so we talked about a whole lot about, of course, about diabetes, but if I'm actually going to focus here on this diagram to the right here, we talked about insulin resistance, and I talked about how it actually impacts different things. One of the other things I was talking about was weight with obesity, but it's not just that. This thing called insulin resistance is at the heart or significantly impacting so many different chronic conditions that a lot of people are dealing with. Which really means that a lot of people are dealing with this insulin resistance thing. So we have cancer. When it comes to cancer cells love sugar. They eat it way more than regular cells would. Now it allows it to grow and proliferate. Even sexual, when it comes to our sexual health, polycystic ovarian syndrome, that's a situation where you have cysts growing on the ovaries, which makes it hard for a woman to become pregnant, to actually be able to release ovaries that are healthy. Pretty much the most common sign for women of infertility. That's caused by insulin resistance. Matter of fact, one of the medications that they use to try to reverse that is metformin. Because one of the biggest things that metformin does is not so much a direct thing that it brings blood sugars down, but it helps you to become more insulin sensitive. And so the problem behind it is insulin sensitivity, but erectile dysfunction on the other side here is actually related to insulin resistance as well. We have migraines. We have even Alzheimer's. Our cognitive function as we get older, they've started to call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. That's how closely related it is to insulin resistance. And so high blood pressure, heart disease, fatty liver disease, something that's on the rise. All these things are actually on the rise. Well, you know what's on the rise with it? Insulin resistance. So in addition to insulin resistance, also that poor gut health, that's something that's really, those two are just really driving all these issues that we're having. And so we have these, of course, these chronic conditions, but they may not show up initially like that. What we may see that's also related to insulin resistance, also related to poor gut health, could be constant fatigue, the craving of carbohydrates. Again, all this could be driving it, but also caused by tired after eating, frequent hunger, having cysts, maybe dark skin folds, especially around like your armpit or the back of your neck, We could also have, we talk about some of these chronic conditions, but inflammation, sleep apnea, talk about arthritis for me and for so many other people that got improved when they were able to actually reverse these things. Achy joints, again, memory problems, brain fog, that's something that I dealt with. All these things can be symptoms and related to insulin resistance, but also not also that, but in addition to that, also poor gut health. And so the modern diet dilemma, what is actually driving this, is something that I talked about earlier. It's pretty much the fact that one of the things that we're constantly eating throughout the day over and over again. Maybe every couple hours, every 2 to 3 hours, we're eating like we're little babies. Like we have to have a bottle every single couple of hours. We don't need that as grown adults, but that's how we've been now trained to eat here, especially in the West. And when we're doing that, we're again shooting those blood sugars up, which shoots that insulin up. And again, we're typically a lot of times eating it with processed foods. So we talk about here, even if we're talking about real food, at least something that started off as real food, you process it, take away the fiber, and that's causing those blood sugar spikes to go even higher than they would have. It's bad enough that we're eating frequently throughout the day, but now those blood sugar spikes go even higher. So if you have like an apple here, take away the fiber, now you have apple juice. So it can be, organic all you want it to be, but if you take away that fiber, when you drink that fruit juice now, that apple juice is going to spike your blood sugar up. Same thing with wild rice. Again, you take away the germ, you take away all the healthy parts of the rice, and you remove the fiber. All you have now is that white rice. Again, it's going to cause that blood sugar to spike up. And so, what do we do about this? Well, what we found to do is a two-product system that has really, again, changed the game not only for us, but for so many other people. And the first part of that system is going to be an all-natural fiber-based matrix that actually helps to decrease blood sugar spikes. So when we're feeding the gut, pretty much what we're doing is I talked about how with the gut, if we're not giving it what it needs, which is typically going to be fiber, those good gut bacteria, that's what they need to be able to thrive. Not just fiber, but also not only large amounts, because most people are getting way less fiber than they need. Most women need about 25 grams at least a day, men maybe 37 grams per day minimum for uh, fiber, and we're getting about on average about 15 grams a day as a society. But why is that? Again, because we're eating all these processed foods that took all of that fiber out. But when we're actually feeding the gut, then we can actually get a reversal of things like IBS, constipation, diarrhea, and skin, because those good gut bacteria, they're getting what they need to be able to thrive, which again is the fiber that, again, over years we've been taking out of our diets. And so, in addition to that, if we're taking this fiber right before a meal, what it does is it actually, again, like I talked about, being able to blunt those blood sugar spikes, it can actually decrease blood sugar spikes by over 40%. This has actually been studied by the University of Sydney. And so, again, amazing thing to help with that in terms of getting that blood sugar control under wraps. Like I was talking about with my mom, getting her A1C back down to 5.1. But it's not just even sugar, it's also helping a lot with cholesterol. I can talk about blood sugar, but right here, the Cleveland Clinic, a lot of times when you see the Cleveland Clinic, when you're doing any like, okay, let me go ahead and be my own personal doctor, and you start Googling stuff, pretty much a lot of articles come up from the Cleveland Clinic. They are the #1 heart hospital in the world. And they have actually studied this actual product called Balance. And it is a seven plant-based, sorry, it's 7 plants that pretty much take fiber sources. And again, you're getting that variety like I talked about before. And they've actually put it into one very delicious fiber matrix. Pretty much they said such a product is if taken regularly could reduce cardiovascular risk on a population basis, potentially decrease the need dose for lipid lowering, which that's cholesterol lowering prescription drugs. And that's what the #1 heart hospital in the world is saying about this product. It's all natural product, because again, it's all coming from a plant-based source. Again, 7 different plant-based sources. So it's an amazing product. But it's not just that. Again, this is something that was something that helps to feed the gut, something that helps you when you eat. But we talked about being able to strategically fast, to be able to stay away from food. Well, for a lot of people who are used to eating 5 to 6 times a day, that's a tough shift to be like, well, I should stay away from food more throughout the day. I mean, they start to get hangry. It's like that's not a good look. And so, what we have also with the system is a product called Unimate. It is a yerba mate plant extract. And what does that mean? What do I care about yerba mate? Well, you should care about yerba mate, because what it can do is actually boost the body's own GLP-1 naturally by over 60%. Now, what does GLP-1 actually do? Some people may not know you've been hearing about GLP-1, but you don't know, well, why is it so beneficial when it comes to weight loss? Pretty much one of the biggest things that it does is it helps you to feel full and satisfied. That's what those GLP-1 receptors, when they're activated, does. Now, instead of now taking something that's actually cooked up in the lab by Big Pharma, we're actually helping you with this tea that you did just drink throughout the day. Whenever you start to hear that food noise, that pretty much you start to sip on that and those voices start to go away. They come back, but you just sip on it again and again because it's boosting that GLP-1 every single time that you're able to do that. And so this helps you to stay away from food throughout the day, stay away from snacks throughout the day, and pretty much you're only eating when you really want to eat, as opposed to all kinds of times throughout the day when, may not be beneficial. And so, again, this is helping you, again, get to the point where you're having your blood sugar stay lower because, we're not necessarily eating all day. And also, if we're getting to that point where we're getting through our blood sugar, now we can actually start getting to that fat. And so we start actually eating on our love handles, if you will, getting that fat being used for fuel as opposed to that sugar. And so, again, the more we can stay away from food throughout the day, that really helps that process along. And so when you put these two together, it really helps to revolutionize people's health. Now, the solution, we put these two together, we call it the Feel Great system or Feel Great protocol. Now, this particular system has 5 products, 5 patents, I should say. So it's something that can't be duplicated. But in addition to that, it's got plenty of clinical studies that have shown its effectiveness, again, with helping with diabetes, weight loss, all these different kinds of things, again, that we've been talking about. But it's also been proven to be safe and natural. Pregnant women, nursing women, children can actually use this system safely and again without side effects. It's also guaranteed, so that's something that where if we're starting on a system, the company, they actually believe in it so much that they'll give you a 90-day money back guarantee if we're not seeing measurable results in terms of its impact on the health. And it's cost neutral, which we'll talk about in a second, which can be a pretty significant thing when we're talking about being able to get our health. We don't want to be spending hundreds of dollars like we're seeing a lot, say, with the GLP-1s, just being able to, again, maybe just address symptoms, but be able to get to the root of what's causing our issues. And then we also have the fact that this is something that's found in over 50 countries, I'd say even now, over 60 countries. So something that's being able to reach and help people across the world. And so, again, these are 2 products, the Unimate and the Balance. Again, the tea that helps the fasting and the Balance that helps with the blood sugar after a meal and to help with the gut being fed what it needs. And so pretty much as you're taking it throughout the day, it really helps. Just as a matter of being strategic about how we do it. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second on the next slide. But pretty much what it comes down to is like with every single one of our meals, we're probably spending at least $5 to $10, honestly, especially in 2026, as far as what groceries actually cost. And so what we're able to do with this particular system is with the fasting that we're talking about, we typically skip a meal, usually either breakfast, that's typically what most people do, potentially maybe even dinner, and we eat the other 2 meals. Well, with that being said, we're saving about $5 to $10 again just by not by eating it. Honestly, the system is actually designed to help us to not snack, so there may be even additional cost savings there. Well, the cost of this particular system is about $159 a month. I know for a lot, for many, that could be a lot of sticker shock. But the thing about that is that if we're staying away, the system is helping us to stay away from a meal a day and to stay away from snacks. That really breaks down to about $5 a day when we're talking about per month. So the system can actually be, pretty much, again, while it's helping you to get all these amazing health benefits, paying for itself because, again, it's helping you to decrease your pretty much your grocery bill by that same amount, if not potentially more. I know for us, me and my wife, we became a little bit cost neutral, a little bit cost positive, honestly, on this system because, again, we're just not eating as much, not needing to buy as much food. And so what does it look like from day to day? How does this actually work? It's a very simple system. We just start with the morning. So you get up in the morning, and instead of eating that first meal like we're typically programmed to do, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You get it first thing in. No, we're actually going to skip breakfast and we're actually going to start drinking our Unimate tea, which is going to help us to actually feel full and satisfied throughout the whole entire morning. Now, with that, that means that we're not snacking. We miss breakfast. Again, there's some cost savings there, but that is also allowing your blood sugar to burn, and also you get to that fat burn. See that big fire here? That's going to be, again, you're getting that fat loss, that fat burn, because, again, you're not eating, which means that you're not getting more sugar in your system. Your sugar got cleared out, and now the only thing the body wants to use for fuel is going to be the fat. That helps you to slim down, all right? And then from there, we actually do get to your first meal, which in this case, you're breaking your fast, but not in the morning. It's going to be in the afternoon with lunch. But before that meal, you're going to take that balance right before. Like I said, it decreases that blood sugar spike, pretty much coats the stomach with that fiber. So the food that comes after that, it doesn't shoot into the bloodstream, with all the sugar. It slowly gets in there. And then again, of course, you don't have those insulin spikes either. And so that really helps with that. Also helps you to feel full and satisfied a little bit more with all that fiber building up in the gut, kind of thickens and everything like that. So again, you may not even eat as much as you normally would. But then after lunch is done, you broke your fast. For a lot of people now, they're feeling like, okay, I feel like eating. My appetite's been stimulated. Now you get back to that tea, get back to the unamate, and so we're not snacking throughout the day. And now you can get through, snacking throughout the afternoon, get to lunch, time to get to dinner, and you go ahead and eat dinner. But this again, you do the balance again. Take that right before that meal, and that decreases that blood sugar spike. After that, and then you go to sleep, wash, rinse, repeat. So a very simple system. Again, two all natural products that have an amazing impact. And as far as that impact, I want to share with you a little bit more about how it's helping some other people. We have the first gentleman here, his gout has gone away, A1C 13.8 down to a 5.9, all while losing about 90 pounds in the process. More energy, more mobility. I'm sure the gout going away has helped significantly with that. But we also have our friend Elena here, she actually was looking into more of it for that cholesterol, like I talked about the Cleveland Clinic and its glowing recommendations about this particular medication. Her cholesterol went down 76 points, triglycerides down 120 points, lowered her blood pressure as well on the system, and no longer having sleep apnea. Just an amazing testimony of just how powerful the system can be off of all her medications. Grateful for the system. And then we have Donna here, who is down 50 points. A1C went from a 7.9, so diabetic, down to 5.4, no longer diabetic. Insulin resistance score, that's something where I didn't go into that, but an idea of just how much of a problem you might have with insulin resistance. Went from a 5.6 to 1.5. 1.5 is a good, healthy level. Anything above, really above 2 for that, but definitely above 3 as anything that's something that you have to be concerned about. So 5.6 above 3 down to 1.5, looking good right now. Went from I think it's a 4XL shirt down to an XL. So just again losing that weight. Irritable bowel syndrome gone away. Again, neuropathy pain gone. So many different benefits. And this young lady on the end losing 63 pounds. Diabetes going away. Joint pain going away. Inflammation going away. And that's one of my testimonies as well. Vertigo even being going away. Skin is clearing up, and that's also a lot of times to do with that gut health being cleared up. A lot of those toxins that are being released. If we can shore that up, then our skin's not trying to get rid of it through the skin, which makes the skin look not so great. Confidence is back. I mean, this is just amazing testimony. So just wanted to share again what it's been able to do for us. We have this one last picture here with just so many other people with before and afters. You have me and my wife in the corners here, but it's my sister, my sister-in-law. Just had an amazing benefit from it. She actually has MS. That's an autoimmune condition, which is a lot of times driven by poor gut health. That has improved for her significantly. People down over 100 pounds. Just looking a lot younger, getting off all these meds. So again, we just want to be able to expose you guys to something that I pray will be of a benefit to you if you're looking for something, maybe you've been beating your head, trying to do everything to get some of these chronic conditions under control, not knowing why everything that you're being told to do is not working for you. You're doing the diet, you're doing the exercise, you're doing the calorie deficit as best you can, but it just doesn't seem to be moving the needle at all. Next thing you're having this complication, you're getting diagnosed with yet another chronic condition. You're like, what's going on? I think this might be something that you really need to seriously take a look at. So with that, I did want to share with you the link that I can give to you to my website where you get a little bit more information about this feel rate system. And so stop sharing here so that I can go ahead and drop this in the chat. And so let me retrieve this. So I wanted to share with you again the link to kind of get to my website and find out more about this system. The link to the website is going to be called resetwellness.info/system. So for those that may be listening to it, you want to write this down again, resetwellness.info, I-N-F-O, reset wellness, no spaces. It's resetwellness.info/system. That'll get you again to the my website. I'll learn more detail potentially if necessary on top of what I may be able to share with you. But for those that you may be already on the system, or you just wanted to learn a little bit more about metabolic health in general. Again, you're maybe in that place where it's like, this is good information, that's good for me to know, but I'm not ready to make that kind of investment in my health quite yet. I'm trying to do some other things. Hopefully, I might be able to share some other things with you right now. And so there is an email list that I have just recently started putting together. And I hope to be able to start getting a little more regular with getting those emails out for people to learn a little bit more about, again, what's really driving maybe some of the poor health outcomes that they have and what it can do to reverse it. Again, a lot of that's going to be driven by this resistance and this poor gut health. But, what is it that we can actually do to actually help with that? There's a lot of different strategies. So I want to be able to share those with you. And so I have an email list called the Wellness Reset. But along with that, if you were actually to check out this in the site that I have here. I just threw into the chat. It'll help you to also get a freebie, if you will. It's called the Metabolic Reset Blueprint. So again, a lot of these different strategies will be in that one document to kind of help you along with your health journey. And so if you wanted to actually join the email list, it's going to be, again, resetwellness.info/ in this case, email hyphen list. So again, it's resetwellness.info/ email hyphen list. And so I'd love for you to be able to get information out to you in ways I want to be able to serve my people. And that's pretty much all that I have for you guys. All this information has been a blessing to you. And until next time, and I love you guys.